Sorry about that. And the intro sounds different from anyway. And I forgot to. And the countdown intro sounds different now for some reason. Anyway, hi guys. It's been a while since I haven't do StreamYard. So yeah. Oh yeah, and thank you guys for yesterday. We I finally reached 4,000 subscribers. Thank you so much, guys, for that. I really appreciate it for your support. I'm so happy I reached it yesterday. Anyways, let's say hi in the chat. Sub Extender. S- Wait, sub sub Extender. Wait a minute. There's two Extender, I think. Anyway. Oh yeah. I will show you. I will show you Fedomix stuff I have. Like I just showed earlier. That's a Fedomix. Oh, oh yeah, I made this reskin of Thundercat Fedormix. What do you guys think? Okay. Yep. Hi. Oh wow. Okay. Oh yeah, guys. One. Should I do a reaction? The Milwaukee Road by Winnipeg Relfin. Should I reaction to it? Yes, sir. Okay then. Let's go. All right, let's get into it.
Hammond, you idiot! You reversed into the sports lorry!
There we go. Nothing.
You've seen the memes. You know the name. The railroad in the Midwest with the most aura next to the Grunk and the Rock, of course. That's right. You know what? Y'all get a counter going. Count how many times I say the Milwaukee.
The Milwaukee Road.
The Milwaukee. See, there we go already. I'm gonna drive myself insane. The railroad's
The
history
Milwaukee
begins in
Road.
the great state of Wisconsin back in 1847 with the newly chartered Milwaukee and Waukesha Railroad. Somehow they didn't build track until 1850, and by then the name had changed to the Milwaukee and Mississippi. After restructures, acquisitions, and rail line extensions throughout Wisconsin and into Minnesota throughout the 1850s and into the early 1870s, the Milwaukee and St. Paul finally reached Chicago, adding another element to the company's name. Throughout the 1880s, the Milwaukee Road acquired their line. Damn it. Throughout the 1880s, the
The
railroad
Milwaukee
acquired
Road.
or built lines throughout Illinois, like from Chicago to Savannah, Illinois, for example, and expanded further west to Council Bluffs, Iowa by 1882 and Kansas City, Missouri by 1887. Not too long after, they acquired the Milwaukee Northern, giving them access to Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Shout out to the Yoopers watching right now, if there's any. The Milwaukee, oh my gosh, the Milwaukee Road was on top of the world
Milwaukee
by the
Road.
early 1900s. They had successfully reached major cities all across the Midwest, like the Twin Cities in Minnesota, Omaha Council Bluffs, Kansas City, Chicago, of course, as well as new branches reaching into the Dakotas. They were considered to be the most prosperous railroad at the time. Around this time is when they were given the nickname the St. Paul Road, despite them using the full CMSTP name. However, they would need more of a network to keep up with up-and-coming and already existing competitors. They felt like if they didn't expand westward, they could lose out to competition, especially after a couple of the northern transcontinental roads with pre-existing connections to the west coast took control of another road with connections to Chicago. One thing the Milwaukee Road is known for is the Pacific Extension, the Milwaukee's attempt to keep up with competitors that ran from Chicago to the west coast, like the Union Pacific, but mainly the Northern Pacific and the Great Northern. Arguments for the expansion were that they expected a drastic increase in various shipments to and from the Pacific Northwest, especially seeing as around this time their traffic shifted from being dominated by wheat to other goods like industrial products, which definitely included a bit of wood. And if there's one thing the Pacific Northwest doesn't lack, it's trees for building materials. Arguments against it at the time were the possibility of the Panama Canal being built in competition from the other established roads like the GN and NP. The Milwaukee sent out a surveyor to map out a route to the Tacoma-Seattle region and to estimate the cost of the build. He came back and gave them an estimate in the ballpark of $45 million. The bigwigs sat on it for a bit and said, "Fuck it, we ball," commencing construction of the route by 1905. By 1908, a significant amount of progress was made. They had reached Montana by late summer of that year, and at the same time they set up a subsidiary called the Chicago, Milwaukee, and Puget Sound Railroad that started construction east from Tacoma towards Montana to meet the St. Paul team. The final spike was driven in Garrison, Montana on May 14, 1909. Starting in 1912, most of the route through Montana, Idaho, and Washington was electrified, as steam locomotives in long, unventilated tunnels through the route's mountainous terrain is pretty risky safety-wise. By 1927, electrification reached as far west as Seattle and as far east as Montana, and in total cost around $24 million. It seemed to have been a good idea, as it actually lowered operating costs, not having to run steam engines and build related infrastructure. The Pacific Extension remains one of the longest stretches of electrified trackage in North America. The locomotives of choice at the time were the Alco GE, EF1, and EP1 units built around 1915 to 1916. So how much did the route cost to build in total? Well, after racking up a bill with electrification and overall labor, the extension cost $236 million.
Wow,
And that's in
damn.
1920s money. Adjusted for
That's a
inflation,
lot of cost.
pyrocynical, that is $4.2 billion in 2025. The boom in traffic petered out like 10 years before the electrification was done, especially after the Panama Canal was finally constructed in 1914, which, as many train nerds like myself know, was a real arrow to the knee to the rail industry. To say the Milwaukee was in debt after this would be an understatement. They were cooked. In 1928, the company restructured and the Chicago, Milwaukee, St.
cooked.
Paul, and Pacific as we know and love today emerged, finally being given the name the Milwaukee Road.
Yes, the Milwaukee Road indeed. The one of the most the memes and legendary name I ever heard. It's the Milwaukee Road. Yeah, the Milwaukee Road. Yeah. Yes, the Milwaukee Road.
During the Great Depression, they declared bankruptcy, but somehow scraped by, possibly because of this. The Hiawatha service started in 1935 as speedy streamlined service between Milwaukee and Chicago. It at first used streamlined Alco 442 Atlantic A-class locomotives, and later 464 Hudson-type F7 class engines. The service was created to directly compete with the Burlington route's Zephyr services. The sleek and modern trains operated daily at speeds of around 100 miles an hour. The service was a smash hit, and other services were given the high-speed steamers and adorned with the Hiawatha name. One infamous Hiawatha run in 1950 was when an F7 practically blew himself up, going somewhere between 90 and 100 miles an hour. Parts of the engine flew as far as 1,400 feet.
Okay, damn. I remember what happened. Yeah, I remember what. Yeah, I remember what. Yeah, I remember what happened to them. It got scrapped and retired because of reason. So yeah.
Feet away. injuring one man driving nearby, but miraculously not killing anyone on board or in the vicinity of the train. The engine was immediately retired afterwards. However, some of the other F7 Speedsters lasted until 1951, when, like most other railroads at the time, diesels took over for the most part on passenger and freight service. Overall, the 40s, 50s, and 60s were pretty good for the Milwaukee. They managed to stay afloat. They were even confident enough to get into talks with other Midwestern roads like the Chicago Northwestern and the Rock Island to merge. Other things of note, including them entering a partnership with the Union Pacific to run their Chicago to Omaha passenger trains over the Milwaukee's lines instead of the CNWs, as you can kind of see with the armor yellow rolling stock and engines around that time, as well as a huge modernization of the Chicago commuter services with new Budd bi-level gallery cars and EMD F40C locomotives. The 70s, despite new trackage rights over the Burlington Northern System and the Pacific Northwest, and a new connection to Louisville over the Monon line through the new owner, the L&N, the disco decade wasn't great for the Milwaukee. The Little Joes,
boy.
the Rocky
Oh, yeah, I
Mountain,
remember
and Coast divisions
1970s
were
for
put out of service
Milwaukee
by 1974
Road.
after it became too costly to give the route much
It's a
needed
bit rough.
upgrades and electrification. In 1977, the road lost over $100 million between 70.
Damn the Milwaukee. Damn the Milwaukee Road. Whoa, you got a big Roxy. Damn. Okay. Yeah, I think Penn Central is the worst. I think the Penn Central is the worst one than the Milwaukee Road for the Big Roxy reasons. Because since the Penn Central got bankrupt too back in June 21st, 1970, was most a failure railroad I ever heard. Anyway, let's continue. Give me one moment, please. Hey, it's my Mingo, my friend. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. FedOmix 3195. So glad to see you, by the way. Anyway, let's continue.
And 77, and basically amputated the Pacific Arm, seeing as traffic dried up so much that it often had one train a day along the line. There was still some activity on the route further east towards Chicago, with agricultural trains across the prairies. The rest of the decade was a period of heavy cost and asset cutting. The mid-70s is what some refer to as the Milwaukee II era, where they locked in on Midwestern service to Kansas City, Louisville, Minneapolis, Duluth Superior, Michigan's DLC, and not Omaha anymore. The Illinois Central around this time teased the idea of merging with the Milwaukee, but it ended up being sort of like a Tinder scenario where you match and talk to someone for a week and then never speak to each other again. The merger had potential, but in the end, the IC was more of a north-south orientated system, and the Milwaukee was a more east-west. The IC ended up going with the Gulf Mobile in Ohio to form the IC Gulf Railroad. The Milwaukee Road system shrunk even more going into the late 70s and early 80s. The Chicago commuter services were fully taken over by the Chicago RTA in 1982, and they were now fully dependent on Conrail and Seaboard system to reach Louisville. In 1983, still in reorganization, a few other railways gained interest in acquiring the Milwaukee Road, those being the Grand Trunk Western, the Grunk, the Chicago Northwestern, and the Soo Line. Around 19
Yeah, I think the Soo Line acquired them in the first on the New Year's Day, 1986. As for the Gronk, it was brought Canadian National brought the Gronk, and then Union Pacific brought Chicago Northwestern in 1995. So yeah, and let's continue.
1982, the Milwaukee II system was hemorrhaging money, losing $82 million before the GTW stepped in to help. Well, really just help create a link between CN's trackage here in Winnipeg the Duluth, Winnipeg, and Pacific's Lake Superior trackage, and the Grunk's own mainline from Port Huron, Michigan to Chicago. The other two roads, the CNW and the Soo, took notice and started a bidding war for the Milwaukee. Not wanting the Canucks/Michigander to take a big piece of the Midwestern pie, the two blew the Grunk out of the water with bids way higher than what the GT was willing to pay. And on that note, they dropped out. The CNW seemed to have come out as the clear winner, even outbidding the Soo by $210 million. However, the judge, Thomas McMillan, in charge of the Milwaukee during their bankruptcy crash-out, ruled in favor of the Soo after CNW revealed that its plan was to liquidate and or abandon over 1,000 miles of Milwaukee track that Soo planned to use. And so, the 137-year-long history of a railroad came to an end. The Milwaukee Road was finally acquired by the Soo Line on New Year's Day, 1986.
By the Milwaukee Road.
The Milwaukee's Pacific Mainline remnants had been sold to the BN a couple years prior. The UP of Michigan and rural Wisconsin trackage was operated by Soo for a year, but ultimately sold to newcomer Wisconsin Central Limited, pretty much recreating the original 1899 Wisconsin Central Railway. The new Wisconsin Central ended up becoming part of the CN in 2001, so technically the Grunk did win after all. As for the new owners, the Soo, they were fully merged into the Canadian Pacific Railway in 1990, kickstarting the CP Rail system era. CP Rail still uses the Milwaukee system to this day to access Chicago. As for preservation, many stations along Milwaukee trackage still stand, some being used to this day by Metra and Amtrak, the latter carrying the Hiawatha name for its Chicago to Milwaukee service, and the aforementioned road having an MP36PH locomotive painted to honor the commuter line's heritage. A good few passenger cars survive in private use or on tourist railways. A portion of the Pacific Extension route was converted to a biking and hiking trail in Idaho, and there's a few of those electric engines that were preserved, an EP1, an EP2, a couple of the Little Joes named after Joseph Stalin, wow, okay. A few diesels, including rare Alco models and steamers, are preserved on display, or in service at museums and on Class 1, 2, and 3 railways across North America and Chile. Yeah, they're...
Wow, Chile. I don't know. Yeah, I remember those that sent to Chile after Wisconsin Central, Soo Line, and the Milwaukee Road. So yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Light-duty SDL-39 models all wound up in South America after their time on the Soo and Wisconsin Central. Unfortunately, we did lose a piece of Milwaukee history, as the last Soo unit on CP Soo property in Milwaukee paint, GP40 number 2010, often referred to as a bandit unit, was scrapped in late 2024.
That's unfortunate.
However, there's still tons of second-gen diesels of Milwaukee origin out there in revenue service. And of course, you can't talk Milwaukee Road without mentioning the legendary steam excursion star, Milwaukee Road 261. .261 is an Alco 484 Northern Type S3 class steam engine built in July of 1944. It was in revenue service until 1954 when it was retired, and eventually donated to Green Bay's National Railroad Museum in '58. It was restored and run on the main line after a group known as the Friends of 261 fired it up again in 1993, and for over 30 years, it's been an occasional excursion service across the Midwest. Today's CP Rail system holds on to the reporting mark MILW, while the Milwaukee Historical Society owns the right to the name and iconography. to preserve the legacy of an iconic North American railroad.
The Milwaukee Road. Ha! Ha! I can try that.
Hey everyone, this is the Winnipeg Foamer. Hope you enjoyed the video, even in the slightest. I was actually on a temporary setup for a couple weeks while recording the script and just making the video in general. Hopefully it didn't sound that much different or weird or whatever. Special thanks to some of the people that helped with footage like SD45-7500, Sam Loves Trains, and CoasterFan2105. Some genuinely great guys, and I'm
yeah, I
honored
know
to have
that
worked with them
YouTuber.
for this project. I highly recommend you show them some support here and on Instagram. As always, shout out to the channel members for the additional support. Thanks to everyone else that sent in photos and videos. And be sure to follow me on Instagram for unfunny train memes and terrible photos. For now, you know the rules. Be nice in the comments. Don't diddle kids. Don't derail trains for clout. See you
Next
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Next. Kids, don't derail trains for clout. See you next Tuesday.
Gather round. Gather round.
That music goes hard, not gonna lie.
The Milwaukee Road.
The Milwaukee Road. The Milwaukee Road. Anyway, that's my reaction of the Milwaukee Road. Hi. Hi. I gotta go and uh, I think I gotta go at 11:20. So yeah. Yo, what's up? You just missed the Milwaukee Road, and that's it. And that's it. Yeah. all right, guys. Before I gotta go, thank you so much for 4K subscribers. I am really appreciated for your support once again. Yeah, I'm still continuing making this channel into the future because now I'm st- I know I'm still working on rail fitting compilation number two, which is very slowly to work on it due to it took me so long to work on it. So yeah. So anyway, I will see you guys later. Peace out, everybody. See ya.